Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
I don't have to defend my political relationships because I have been a political left radical for most of my life, and I have been a severe critic of the left for most of my life, and for which I have no apologies. But the program of the white left is no different from the program of the white right, to control by any means necessary.
We all have a Grand Master teacher or some other of our luminaries who are our personal favorite. Dr. John Henrik Clarke is mine. And it's poetically just that he's not just born during the first month of the year, but on the first day of the year. Because I think that if any of our thought leaders deserve to be number one, it's him. And no, it is no exaggeration at all to say that this man is a hero. You see, the dominant society doesn't have any heroes, that's why they have to make them up. They don't have anyone in their lineage or their history who is a man of honor or morality, not even one. Their so-called heroes are usually people they had to make up out of whole cloth. People like Tom Cruise and that cult he's a part of, they worship a science fiction author. Well, our icons and heroes are real, not fiction, and we don't have to sanitize them or redact most of their words and deeds in order to make them palatable to decent people. Our heroes and sheroes were moral people from the jump. But then again, that's the culture they come from. That's the lineage they come from. Meanwhile, the so-called great figures of white society were merely men of their time, which is always code for slave owners, genocidal lunatics, mass murderers, and please don't mind all the tons of dead bodies. We don't have to apologize for anything our heroes and icons did because they were on the right side of history. Meanwhile, the loyal opposition has to invent moral icons because they don't have any of their own. That's the reason why we should make it a point to honor our icons. Because by venerating them, we honor ourselves. Who from the dominant society is like Dr. John Henrik Clarke? The humble son of black sharecroppers, the peasant nobility as he called them, fighting to break the chains of Jim Crow, especially the chains on black people's minds. Dr. John Henrik Clarke came across the works of black scholars in the library, and from there he devoured everything he could find. He was an autodidact, that means he taught himself. And in the process, he became a walking encyclopedia on his own history and that of melanated people abroad. He became a historian because he understood the so-called history that had been given to us by our oppressors was a lie agreed upon. Well, Dr. John Henrik Clarke didn't agree with it. The future is built on the past, and if you allow someone to program you with a false memory of the past, whatever you do in the future will be dysfunctional. So Dr. Clarke went about setting the record straight, illuminating not just what had happened in the past, but also using it as a compass to point us to a way forward. He was a man of the left, in the general abstract sense of the term, but he also made it clear he had no illusions about how the white left's agenda was not the same as ours. He fully recognized this fact. In the early 20th century, as a young man, like so many other black intellectuals looking for some sort of oppositional ideology to what they were encountering in America, Dr. Clarke also dabbled with white socialists. That's because they had a pre-existing infrastructure in place. When a group has already built a machine, it's very tempting to jump on board their bandwagon because it's there. It's far more convenient than to build one's own. But Dr. Clarke, like so many other black people who had experimented with socialism, soon became disabused of his white host's good intentions. These black ideologues realized that these white leftists were not against white supremacy and never had been. They simply resented their own place under white supremacy. That was the only thing the white left was attempting to change. Even Dr. Noam Chomsky admitted this, that they have strong disagreements over generally shared aims, that they've created a political and economic paradigm where they can have vigorous, even violent arguments with each other, but that doesn't change what they're after. Hell, they can have 2 world wars and bathe Europe in the blood of their own people. And then in the end, they can put all that aside and go right back to oppressing us as if nothing had happened. During World War II, they treated Nazi POWs kindly and with respect. Meanwhile, they were attacking and even lynching black servicemen who were fighting alongside them. And after the war, they brought Nazis to the U.S., Operation Paperclip. Meanwhile, they had a ban on black immigration to the U.S. until foundational black Americans fought to dismantle that in the 60s. As Dr. Clarke said, their wars are nothing more than arguments among a couple of thugs about which one of them will hold the whip over us. Dr. Clarke's wisdom and insight has always been a welcome enlightenment and even comfort. And yes, Dr. John Henrik Clarke was a Pan-Africanist because he felt that global African unity was the only way to crush white supremacy and to secure the future of black people on this planet. He was right. If we had global unity among all melanated people, that would change everything. But the problem is we don't live in a world of ifs, woulds, and coulds. We live in a world of what is. And in this world, the real one, the problem was then and remains to this day that the only people who actually want black empowerment as a group are foundational black Americans. True, there are black people in Africa and the Caribbean and South America and elsewhere who also want black empowerment too. They're among us here. And if an accurate history of this chapter in our story is ever written, it must include them too. But the problem is that these people have been the minority in their own lands. The fundamental contradiction of Pan-Africanism is that in order for it to be realized, that would mean uniting with other countries too. And not only have we been rejected and rebuffed by these political leaders there, but the majorities of their populations in these places have also rejected us too. The problem runs far deeper than just their kleptocrat governments. They have gleefully thrown open the gates to foreigners from Europe, the US, and Asia, and they've gone out of their way to lock foundational black Americans out and to even spit in our faces. And it's not that they don't understand the idea that we're presenting to them. They understand it full well, and they reject it. They're opposed to it. Not only do they reject a message of black empowerment from us, they don't even want a message of black empowerment from other Africans or Caribbeans or South American figures either. These other groups are committing political and national suicide. We are trying to fight white supremacy, but all these other groups want to fight is us. This is what's crippled these places for so long, and they flee here to the only place where black people actually built something and didn't engage in self-sabotage. But when they get here, their first move is to denigrate us, insult us, and make common cause with our oppressors, the very people who kept them out for a century. And then you look at Africa and the Caribbean, and you understand this is what they've been doing there too. Dr. John Henrik Clarke laid out a vision of a united black world that finally reclaimed its mind and its spirit from white supremacy, and that this would be based on the principles of African antiquity. Fair enough, but at some point we have to be frank about why it is that we don't already have this unity now. Why is it that the United States, the home of Dr. John Henrik Clarke, is literally the only place where this kind of ideology has ever caught on? In Africa, they want to tell one another that my tribe is better than your tribe. And in the Caribbean, they're utterly consumed and eaten up with envy and jealousy of black Americans to the point they can't concentrate on anything else. And as for South America, from Mexico to Argentina, virtually all the blacks in those Spanish and Portuguese-speaking countries have a dysfunctional relationship with their own blackness. They're the main ones who run around saying, me no black, me no black. And worst of all, they've brought these same dysfunctional practices here with devastating results. You can't have unity with that. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. When people have spent decade after decade in what amounts to centuries practicing being disloyal and lying to themselves and trying to get over on one another and wishing that they could be blonde-haired and pale-skinned, they will never be receptive to a message of black empowerment. We overcame our differences here and forged an identity of blackness that crossed all of those petty, minor, insignificant little lines. And there's many in Africa, the Caribbean, and elsewhere who have also agreed to do the same. Dr. John Henrik Clarke recognized the efforts of these individuals, especially in the Caribbean. But as we saw with Marcus Garvey and Dr. Ben, these prophets were without honor in their own lands. The reason white supremacy still stands is because you have an oppressed minority in the United States fighting against it, and black majorities in all these other places fighting to uphold it. That's the reality. But to be sure, Dr. John Henrik Clarke was not at all naive about this reality. In fact, he spoke about it in scathing detail at length. One of the times he aired someone out was when he spoke about the Million Man March and specifically addressed Louis Farrakhan and his West Indian connections.
Farrakhan has not answered to us. For some things we should have obviously asked some questions about. After the Million Man March, the Caribbean News had a headline hailing the march in the triumph of the West Indian Farrakhan. How did Farrakhan suddenly become a West Indian? He wasn't born there. Why are you emphasizing his West Indianness now? He ain't got no West Indian support. Why did you let Farrakhan get away with saying repeatedly the slave ships stopped in the West Indies and left the strong ones and brought the weaker ones over here, which is a lie? In a speech made right here in New York, Farrakhan bought the story of the curse and said, and I've got it on tape, I got it on video, and I got it on audio, that people with dark skin and woolly hair, a certain kind of nose, was cursed. And that the texture of your hair and the texture of your eyebrows supposed to be the same. He's saying with his high yellow self that he is pretty and blessed by God. And we come down now and glorify fakers, liars, people who ridicule us about our color. We make them millionaires, give them stretch limousines, and they spit on us.
So decades before we were calling this stuff out, Dr. John Henrik Clarke was. We wasted a lot of years trying to get other people on board. We spent decades bringing them into this country with the expectation that they would finally drop the tribalism and the jealousy and the self-hate, but instead of dropping those bad habits, they intensified their attacks on us to the point that white power has installed tethers and foreign flags in most of the top positions in government, academics, and media. And the top priority of these bootlicks and tools has been to do white supremacy's dirty work and make sure that we never change the anti-black status quo. We preach black empowerment to people who didn't want it, and whom in most cases didn't even want to be black. But that's not to say that Dr. John Henrik Clarke's goal of Pan-Africanism was a bad idea, but at the end of the day, you can't have a partnership without other people who are willing to be partners. When you've spent your entire life in pursuit of one thing, it's hard to have to let it go, but that's also one of the lessons that Dr. John Henrik Clarke taught to us. He himself said that everything you're a part of is supposed to be used as a tool of your empowerment, or you should leave it in the dustbin of history. Pan-Africanism cannot be a tool of our empowerment, because for a century now we've had tethers, foreign flags, and base opportunists who have used our pursuit of black empowerment as a Trojan horse to attack us and carry out the same behaviors that gave white supremacy its advantage in the first place. Sooner or later, we were going to demand that the attacks on us stop, that these black immigrants get on code. We were going to put our foot down and put the immigrants on notice that their disrespect was going to stop and that anyone who doesn't want to be black cannot be with us. In other words, at some point, we were going to come to a moment of truth. Well, that day is here now. And instead of changing, the so-called diaspora has continued to fight against black empowerment. And we do ourselves no favors by ignoring that truth. But we also do ourselves no favors by ignoring the tremendous and substantial contributions that Dr. Clarke made to us as well. His mission was the empowerment of his people, as is ours. We are empowering those who identify as being his people, foundational black Americans. And also we reach out to those who are from abroad, whether it be Africa, the Caribbean, and all points in between. If you're B1 and on mission, then for us, nothing has changed. We're taking his advice not to carry any ideology that doesn't empower us literally. We're still all about black empowerment, but what we're not about anymore is continuing to try to drag the disloyal and the disrespectful with us. That we are not about. As Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, if you're going to do something, either do it right or don't do it. He was one of the main people who laid the foundations of our philosophical underpinnings. Pan-Africanism is dead, but the goal of black empowerment that he fought to bring about is alive and well. We've refined and refocused our numbers. It's not the masses who will change things. It's the dedicated few. Dr. John Henrik Clarke's life stands testament to that. His scholarship, his moral clarity, and his unbreakable will to fight is an inspiration and a personal challenge to us all. Threats to his life didn't stop him. Having a stroke didn't deter him. The man lost his sight and went blind, but that didn't stop him. He kept fighting literally until the day that he died. He kept teaching until his final breath. He dedicated his entire life to one thing, and that was raising the mentality of his people. He waged his war before the internet. He made his bones before the advent of television, in the face of massive opposition from the official forces of white supremacy. It's very easy to fail to appreciate the sheer magnitude of the work that he had to put in, and that's because we have all the conveniences and tools of the digital age. But I can tell you right now, the monumental work he had to accomplish deserves to be recognized by us all. If we have the tools of technology available to us, and we do, then we should do more with them than to seek diversions or distractions. A people who forget their past are a people who have no future. So let's continue to walk in the shoes of Dr. John Henrik Clarke. Let's continue to show that we've achieved political maturity by no longer venerating athletes and actors. People who are serious about their power and who others recognize as being serious make it a point to pedestalize people who stood tall for their empowerment. They make a statement about what's important to them by honoring people who are important to them. And in our case, we don't ask permission or take an opinion poll to make sure the dominant society is comfortable with our heroes. Dr. Clarke said it best. He didn't make any apologies for speaking the truth, and neither do we. If you haven't taken the time to read his works, or at the very least listen to his lectures, let today be the day that you start. Because we don't stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of titans. And when we tell our story, we must ensure that people of principle and significance, like Dr. John Henrik Clarke, are a prominent part of it.